as well.
YouTube.
Okay, we should be live on YouTube now. Oh, Khalid here. Oh yeah, you're streaming. Okay, Khalid is on Facebook, is seeing us. But YouTube people,
I'm stretching out my neck.
can you tell us? I see on YouTube. I see we have Mars. I
We are.
see.
We're live on YouTube, baby.
How's our audio?
How is our audio? That's a question for Faraz and Mars and Babylon Project and all these
Oh yes,
wonderful
we are.
human beings slash bots who have joined us.
Audio is good.
Uh,
Mars is saying we can hear you guys. Okay, let's get started. We have so much to cover today.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi. Armin, how are you? Armin, you're a little tense today.
Yeah, man, I woke up I know the Iran protests were intense, but this morning when I woke up and I saw the messages coming at me from Iran, the amount of it was already escalating yesterday, but this morning when it was already the speed at which things were changing on the ground was already very extreme yesterday, but I didn't think it's going to get to where we are right now
Yeah.
today.
Let's figure out. Let's give everybody a little bit of a background because a lot of people may not know what's going on, and I'm serious about that because the news cycle everywhere you go, they're all talking about Trump's impeachment hearing. So there's actually something really significant that's going on across the rest of the world. There's several in recently protests in Lebanon have caused the Lebanese government to resign. Protests in Iraq have caused the Iraqi government to resign, and right now we're experiencing some of the most intense protests in Iran since 2009, since the Green Revolution there. This is way beyond what happened in 2017, 2018. Oh, no, 2018, 2019.
Yeah,
Sorry?
by some measures is getting worse than 2009. By some measures, it hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. So now what's happening is that this started, quote unquote, started. The trigger for this was an announcement on Friday by the Iranian government, the hardline Islamic regime, that they're going to increase fuel prices, oil prices, in some cases by up to 300%. So massive increase in that. Why did they want to do it? Because they said they wanted to generate money so they could give it to other people who needed it. So it was just a redistribution scheme, taking advantage of people who needed to travel and just raising gas prices. There's a lot of frustration with that because Iran is under very severe sanctions from the Trump administration since the bust up of the Iran deal that the U.S. Basically violated and withdrew from. And as a result of those sanctions, they're
violated or withdrew from depends on who you're speaking to. Okay,
who you're speaking to.
Yeah, okay,
but I mean, you can't when you have a treaty, and you just decide to pull out of it for no reason. I mean, you're kind of in a way, anyway.
No, okay.
That's semantics,
no, it's not semantics because people could argue you're not pulling out of a treaty where other members of the treaty already canceled it, so you technically don't have to abide by it. When the United States pulled out, you're not violating because they've already pulled out. So you don't have to abide by the treaty.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So what happens is that after this, there's these severe sanctions on Iran. Unemployment's gone through the roof. Your inflation has gone through the roof, and now this announcement of fuel prices, and these people had enough. But then, as what happens in Iran, it seems like there has been a bubbling kind of undercurrent of anti-government sentiment and anti-theocracy sentiment, and just a problem with the Islamic Republic, a dissatisfaction with their regime for a very long time. And now what you're seeing with these protests that quote unquote started with the fuel prices, you're seeing people saying we don't want the Islamic Republic. You're seeing people carrying a flag with the Allah in the middle of the flag cut out. You're seeing people actually burning Qurans. You have all these other protests. You've got the White Wednesday thing, women taking off their hijabs and burning them and so on. So all of this stuff coming in. Banks have been set on fire. Municipal buildings have been set on fire. I mean, the entire place is, it's a lot of unrest. And Armin, I think you're especially close to it because you know a lot of people in Iran. You grew up in Tehran, obviously. Interestingly, another distinction in this protest is that it is not happening as fiercely in Tehran.
Mm-hmm.
And Tehran is, that's the one place say, well, Tehran is kind of modern and secular and westernized anyway. This is happening mostly in Shiraz and is it Asfa or what's the name of the city?
Esfahan. Actually, the
Asfa,
image,
yeah.
the videos that are coming out of Shiraz right now are the most intense ones that I've seen. If I see Parsa is in the live chat, so he might also disagree with me or not. But let me know, because I woke up when this morning people telling me that Shiraz has fallen. Like, that's, I don't know if it's like I have to like do a little more digging, because I don't want to. A lot of these news is coming from the ground. Most of it hasn't been validated by by any news sources, but it is coming from the ground, and the numbers that we're getting is all over the place, right?
The
So if
people
you,
who've been killed. Yeah.
yeah, of people that have been killed by the government, like, so the reason why this is so different is because the government didn't wait this time. Okay, so they increased the prices. People came into the streets. The government just started shooting at people, directly at the people. Like, it wasn't day two. Like, usually it's like day 5, day 6. Things get escalated. The government are like, okay, let's start shooting people. This one was like shooting, like day 1, shooting people in their face, like right away. Or like, holy shit, like what? Okay, and another thing that was different this time and I think, like, if again you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, especially Parsa and
Hmm.
Faraz. Oh no,
And
Faraz. Hold on.
before you go on, I should also mention that whatever information, Armin, that you're getting, all of this stuff, especially since Sunday, is that the internet. There's been the largest internet
That's what I was
shutdown in
gonna say. No, that was what I was
Iranian
gonna.
history.
That was what I
Yeah,
was
that's
about to
happened. Yeah,
say. No, that was
go
exactly
ahead.
what I was about to say. I would like another thing that was
Whatever
different.
we're getting is probably underreported. Yeah.
Whatever. No, hold on. Okay, so another thing that was different. So the first thing that was different is that they started shooting at people right away, and I think they were. This is something that they were prepared from before. Like, the government was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do next time there's protests. Shoot at people right away. Holy, okay. Don't wait for it to get bigger. Another thing that was different is that usually they cut the last time they cut the internet was again when things got escalated, like, 4 days, 7 days, 10 days, something. I don't remember exactly how many days after the start of the protest. I'm talking about the 2018 protest. All right, so people are going to start. So remember, we had protests in 2009, we had protests in 2018, and now we have protests in 2019. Okay, and obviously we have the original 1979 Islamic revolution as well, right? So people are going to naturally compare these with each other going forward, but it's going to be hard right now to compare this, but with because we just started. But given how fast things are escalating, this is, even at day 4, this is much worse than the 2018 protests when it comes to casualty and the intensity. It hasn't yet gotten to the 2009 protest levels, but given how fast things are escalating, it could get there fast. I don't know. We'll see if tonight there's going to be more protests or not. But the number of deaths hasn't reached 2009 levels, I think. I don't know, because the numbers are all over the place. Obviously, the government data numbers are, you cannot definitely trust that. They are very low, right? But then yesterday I was getting numbers like 30. This morning, I'm getting numbers like 100 from news sources. I'm getting numbers like 100 dead. From ground sources, I'm getting between 200 to 400 dead. I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, like, holy cow! Like, we're day 4. I don't. Okay, so I'm gonna be So because I can't verify any of this, I'm going to be tweeting about this. I'm seeing the videos. The videos, you can trust the videos, because the videos, at least these are recorded from the ground. But they cut the internet on day 1. This is unprecedented, right? They didn't wait. The entire internet of the entire country is cut. I think I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently the IRGC still has access to internet. I don't know how these
Hmm.
videos are making it out.
Are coming. Yeah. Well, people are figuring out. Well, what's
Wait,
really interesting, if you guys are for people listening, you should really check out. So Iranian, the official Iranian state has a media outlet called Press TV. So if you go to presstv.com, um, they have all of the obviously government headlines are saying IRGC saying rioting and insecurity will be dealt with decisively. The U.S. wants unrest in Iran. The U.S. is responsible for this. Iranians are entitled to protest, but insecurity will not be tolerated. Like, there's all of this sort of wordplay. But what's interesting about it is that even with their state media outlets, you can tell that they're kind of spooked. Like the Iranian regime, they are reacting in a way. I think this is, we don't know exactly what it is, but it feels like just going just by their reaction and the kind of stuff they're putting out. It seems like it's just a lot more intense,
right?
And it's kind of spooking them a little bit more than usual.
Well, the reason why this is spooky I think this is even okay. I don't know what. Okay, so a lot of the anti-regime people think this is it. The government is coming down. This is it. This is it. This is our opportunity. We failed in 2018, but now it's going to happen, right? I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if the government will be able to completely, shut this down or not. Given how intense they're coming at it, it seems like they're not holding back at all. But even if they manage to shut this down and in the next few days it gets quiet, I don't know if it's going to get quiet or not. The thing is that the protests are happening now, every year now? And every time it's going to become bigger than the last time. So even if they manage to shut this down, it seems like this is just going to keep happening, right? And if that is true, if it's just going to keep happening, you have to remember that the government has to be able to completely, shut it down every single time, for them not to go down. The people have to win one time, right? The government has to win every single time. The people have to win one time for this government to come down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's a really good point. The other thing is, I think that this time, to me, from what I'm seeing, so because usually you had like hundreds and hundreds of videos that were uploaded in the previous protests, and you saw them. There were big crowds. They were chanting things. It was all very intense. But this time, the municipal buildings burning, the banks on fire, the cars on fire. Right. It's all happening so fast. I feel like they responded really aggressively because of the same reason. And then the other thing is like they're going around, and now they have all these lines like, we're trying to redistribute the money and we're trying to give it to the poor people. But the thing is, they're not talking about how they actually got the money by raising fuel prices 300%. So I don't even think it's about the fuel prices as much. I feel like it's really
not.
more.
No, it's definitely not. This is exactly like Lebanon. Yeah.
They're bullshitting the people. They're saying, "Oh, look, we're going to give 60 million Iranians the money that they need to get through all of this economic crisis. Right. But the way we're going to get it is by making all of you guys pay way more for gas." And the other thing is, they're not allowed to export oil now. Iran is not allowed. The sanctions prevent them from exporting oil. One of the largest oil reserves in the world. Prevent them from exporting oil. If they're not exporting oil, the people want to know. If you're not exporting it, then why aren't you using it for us? Why are we in shit right now?
Okay.
Right?
This is okay. So a lot of the chants. I don't know where to start, man. There's so many things I want to say. So when it comes,
I'm just gonna watch.
This has nothing. This has very little to do with the increase in.
It's not about the oil. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say this. Fuel prices, like. Usually, like in the other protests, for example, if you look at the 2018 protests, right, it started with economic grievances, and then when more people showed up, eventually it turned into completely anti-regime protests against the theocratic regime, against the mullahs running the government, against corruption, everything, against mandatory hijab, against everything, right? But it started with economic concerns. This one, when they increased the fuel prices by 300%, from day one, people that came in the street, they understood that, you know what, this is just an excuse for us to take on this government, right? Like the understanding was,
they're vulnerable.
Yeah, this is like, it's just like a signal for us to come out. It's not about fuel prices. It's about everything, right? It's about everything. And now this means that every time a government does something else, it's just going to be like a trigger for people to get out and protest everything. It's not about the fuel prices. The fuel prices was just a signal for people to come out. And the thing is, this is leaderless, right? And this is why it makes it so difficult for the government to fight it, because you don't know when it's going to happen. Because you don't know what's the next thing that is just going to trigger the protest. Because if they had leaders, You could just follow their leaders, and you could be like, oh, that they're asking for protest. Okay, let's get prepared, right? This is so spontaneous. It's really hard to fight against it, right? Um, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
It's,
again,
it's totally.
with
It's like,
regards to
but it's also that they don't have anything to lose. I mean, now with everything that's going on,
right,
when you're in an economic dumpster, all right. So first of all, you're like, okay, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have money for anything. Okay, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I'm unemployed. I don't have money for anything. And now I'm seeing that this government, right? They are trying to come up with. They're desperate. They're fragile. They're vulnerable,
right.
and this is a time when there is the power differential is a little bit more balanced,
Right. By the way, I
right?
might
So
when I'm referring to previous protests, I might mix the 2009 protests with the 2018 protests. If you notice, I'm mixing them. Please correct me. Okay. So one thing I want to respond to one thing you said, Ali, regarding to Iraq and Lebanon, right? So if you look at the 2018 protests when people came out in the streets, right? A lot of the protests were like, why are you spending money on Lebanon, on Iraq, on Palestine? We have issues at home, right? That's one of the many things that people were protesting against the Islamic Republic, right? But now in 2019, what happened was we had in Lebanon and Iraq. Again, you have to understand, Iran owns technically owns Iraq's government, okay, and also technically owns 1/3 of Lebanon's government, okay, with Hezbollah, right, and it has proxies all over, it has proxies all over the Middle East, right, but
thank you, the
now,
Iraq War.
yeah, yeah, but now these proxies are being it's a challenge to Iran's government when people in Lebanon are protesting and they want things to change, and one of their demands is to be completely independent from foreign sources, whether if it's United States or Iran, and Iraqis are also protesting, and one of their main demands is also independence from foreign sources, whether it's United States or Iran, right? So this is, and Iran wants stability in these places because these are just proxies that it spent 40 years. It spent 40 years building these proxies, and now people are going to protest. It's not going to tolerate that. So now there is some sense of people in Iran feeling a little bit of a unity with people in Lebanon and Iraq against their governments, right? And at the same time, Iran is spending a lot of its resources on Lebanon and Iraq to keep the protests down, right? So the understanding was that if the protest gets escalated to a very high level in Iran, Iran still has a lot of resources to pull back from Iraq and Lebanon to come help against the protests. But some people are now suggesting that that's not an option for Iran anymore right now, because given all the protests, given how tied down the Hashd al-Sha'bi and Hezbollah is already in Lebanon and Iraq. I don't know how accurate that is, but this is something that is being suggested by a lot of people on the ground. However, some other people are saying that Iran has been trying to prepare for this because Iran has been training anti-revolutionary, anti-protesting, forces in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. I think they called the Fatimiyun. Fatima.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think that Fatima is basically Prophet Muhammad's daughter, and you know how Shias, how obsessed they are with Fatima. They worship her like a god. It's called Fatimiyun Afghanistan and Pakistan. So that's something that they've been preparing for. And people on the ground are saying if they pull those from Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are extremely aggressive, and you're gonna see that blood. A lot more blood spill in the street. I don't know how accurate that is. I'm just reading. Again, these are things that I'm reading. People are sending me from Iran. These are in Persian. A lot of these haven't been verified. I'm just going to tell you what people on the ground are telling me, okay? Maybe they're true, maybe they're not, okay? Again, the numbers are also very different. Another thing that people are saying is that, okay, let me give you a government line, okay? If I'm giving you a government line, that doesn't mean that I accept it. I'm just telling you I heard what some people from I watched Al Jazeera. They had somebody from Iran's government speaking, and I was so angry with Al Jazeera because they didn't have anybody to push back against what this government official was saying, right? But what he was saying, which is nonsense, is that this increase in fuel prices was mostly supposed to be a redistribution from the rich to the poor, because most people that can afford cars and are driving, they're a little bit rich, and they were supposed to take this money and give it to the poor, right? And that is nonsense, especially because this is such a bad time to do this, right? People that suggest that this is nonsense is like, this is so strategically seems like such a mistake, especially after this is like revolution season. If you look, if anybody has been paying attention to anything that is happening on the planet right now, revolutions seem to be like
outside the U.S. and outside Congress and the impeachment
hearings.
Like
every protests are taking over the planet.
Hong Kong.
Yeah, Hong Kong, Iraq, Lebanon, Chile. Where else? Like everywhere, France. There's many more that I'm. Is not, yeah. But the thing is that the reason. So this is obviously strategically was a huge mistake by the government, and they should have known that this is a huge mistake. But the reason why they might have been forced to do it anymore is not for the sake of the poor, it's because they're running out of money. Okay? So why would they do this? Why would they do the fuel hikes on such a strategically bad time that they probably should have known that the people are going to come out? Some people are suggesting that the only justification must be that they're so out of money that they have no other choice, right? Yeah. And if that is true, that means, and I know a lot of people that hate this because, a lot of anti-Trump people might hate hearing this. That means that Trump sanctions.
Before you say this, I am very, very anti-Trump, but I agree with you on this.
Okay, I'm also very anti-Trump, but it seems like Trump's sanctions against Iran is working. Okay. Trump sanctions against Iran is working, and it is bringing people into the streets, if that is true. And again, this is something that both Trump supporters and anti-Trump people don't like to hear. The reason is, like, I noticed that a lot of when we were sharing these stories, a lot of Trump supporters were saying that
they don't like that.
Yeah, they were saying like, okay, fine, dude, like go against your government, yoo-hoo, but we need to stay out of this, right? Trump needs to stay out of this. And I wanted to tell people like, too late. This is happening because Trump. Probably, very likely, it's happening because of Trump, right? So Trump supporters are not going to like this because a lot of them are anti-interventionist kind of thing, and anti-Trump people are also, a lot of them are not going to like this because what Trump is doing is working, right? And again, this is very different from what Obama was trying to do. The sanctions on Obama is different from sanctions of Trump. Sanctions of Trump,
even though they did also cripple Iran's economy quite a bit at the time.
But the goal was completely different. Both of them work. Both of sanctions of Obama and sanctions of Trump work. The sanctions of Obama was meant to bring Iran on the table, negotiate. Yeah. And a lot of Iranian people hate Obama because of that, because it was giving the whole end was like, okay, let's make deals with this government, and the whole goal was to legitimize their current regime, right? So a lot of Iranian people were like, no, fuck that, this government needs to fall. So that's why a lot of, again, not all, hashtag not all, but a lot of Iranians might like more Trump strategy, because the sanctions that Trump is introducing is meant to topple this government.
So destroy the government.
Destroy this government, right?
The counter to this, though, and Armin, and this is one of the things, from Trump's point of view, this works, obviously, because what he's doing is he's getting, he knew that this kind of thing would happen, or he wanted it to happen at least. And then all of the people who came and they protested, they're going to potentially, their chances of toppling the government, not saying it's going to happen, but they're higher than they ever were before. Just because the government, as you've said, is so out of money and so weak and so fractured, and the intensity of the protest. I mean, they're burning posters of Khamenei, all right? It's crazy what they're doing. So that's one thing. But the counter is that the people are suffering. So there are people
Yeah.
who are dying. It's a same kind of no, no. I know. I'm just presenting the counter argument. Like this stuff is never clean, right? So what they're doing is by choking off the people and messing up Iran's economy and making essentially the people suffer. The people are angry. Like the Iranians right now, they were not happy just overall with the collapse of the nuclear deal. So they're pissed off at the U.S. for the sanctions. The Iranians are, but they're also pissed off at the corruption of their government, and they feel like both of those things go hand in hand. So for them, it's not like is this America's fault or is this Iran's fault. This is like
No,
it's both of them,
well,
right?
it's hard. Okay. So here's the thing: if you ever say the Iranian people think this, hold
Not.
on.
I know what you mean. I'm going by it's
No,
going by
you're
the kind
gonna
of.
find every different view under the sun. Okay,
Of course, yeah,
so the
yeah.
thing is that a lot of okay. So for example, a lot of Iranian people might love Trump and like, yes, this is exactly what we needed. Yes, people are gonna suffer, but if we remove the mullahs, it's worth all the suffering, right? Some people are like, we're like, no, my dad needs medicine. My dad has cancer, and because of these sanctions, I don't have medicine for my dad.
Exactly.
So fuck Trump, right? And you're gonna have some other people that do many different. Other people might be like, fuck Trump, but let's take advantage of this opportunity anyways. So some people are gonna be like,
The analog for
so
people who hear, if they want to understand what the analog is, it's like when Bill Maher said, he's like, I really want there to be an economic recession because I know that some people are going to suffer, but at least it'll get Trump out of office, right? That so it's that kind of play where
right, but
there is suffering of people
but
involved,
my
but the ultimate goal is still I mean, that's not something that the Trump administration
But I'm
cares
saying
about.
that
They just want the regime to
this is not what all Iranian people. Anybody that says this is what Iranian people think, they're wrong and right at the same time. Because not all Iranian people think that, but there are some Iranian people that do think that, right? They're
That's the
very
second time I'm
there's
accused of that this week.
no. I'm not accusing you of
But
that. I'm just saying you're
no,
right
no,
and
no.
wrong
But
at the
it's
same. Yeah,
interesting.
I'm
The
saying
right
you're
and wrong at the same time. It's Brett Weinstein actually said that
no. Let's
to me
like
on Twitter the other day
no.
because we
Okay,
were talking
Ali,
about
I have so much to say, so
yeah.
let's say let's say focus. Okay,
Let's stay focused.
one thing that I'm reading a message from somebody that got the news from Iran. This is in Farsi. Confirms what Ali is saying. Okay, this is what she's saying. She's saying the protest. This is exactly what Ali just said. I'm reading this for the first time. I'm trying to translate it in real time. She's saying the protest by people is happening in a lot of it is happening in the lower parts of the city where the poor people have lost everything, and the only thing that they have is their lives. And unlike the 2009, unlike the 2009 protests, where the protests were happening in more richer part of the cities, because the richer part of the cities, they want freedom, they want human rights. But now a lot of the protests is happening, compared to 2009, a lot of the protests is happening in poorer part of the cities because they have nothing else to lose. So
That those are the ones. Those are the most. If you're a regime, if you're the government, those are the most dangerous ones because there's nothing that is a bigger threat to you than people who have nothing left to lose.
right.
Just remember, there's nothing that's more of a threat to you than people who have nothing left to lose. And if your government is in a position where they're absolutely desperate, they're totally out of money, they've given all the indications, they're vulnerable, they're out like, attacking this tanker, that tanker, raising fuel prices on their own people by 300%, despite having the largest oil reserves in the world. It's a very, very it's a very precarious situation for the Iranian regime, probably more so than 2009 and probably more so than 2017. The protests may not be at that intensity level. We have no idea because the biggest internet shutdown ever in the history of Iran is happening right now. We have no idea what's going on there. But just judging by the vulnerability of the government and the people who are protesting, this is not the people in Tehran, the modern sort of like well-off people protesting against a relatively strong government that just had an election. And that's not what's happening. What's happening is you have a crippled, fractured, vulnerable government, and the people that are protesting and rising up against them are not from Tehran. They are the poor people who have nothing left to lose.
Right, and this is
That is the situation.
this is actually this is a global trend right now because we're now going through a period on the planet that we're going to have some economic stagnation, and it doesn't mean that economies are not growing, but that the economies are just going to grow a little bit slower, right? And usually when economies are growing, usually most countries are get to take advantage of that, and the reason a lot of people might not enjoy the fact that they're not free, that maybe that they don't have a say. But if there's some sort of economic stability, if they're saying that their children's lives are being better than their lives and things are just improving slowly, the cost of speaking out and protesting is too much for you. They're like, yeah, we're not free, but fuck it, right? But when you have a global economic stagnation that is going to affect the whole planet, it's going to be you're going to see a lot more people that you're not going to be able to keep them quiet for the sake because you have given them economic stability, right? So this is how demanding more rights and freedom ties into economic stability, because the people that want more rights, if they have economic stability, they might just forgo the fact that they just let it go, right? But you're not going to be able to buy people with economic stability uh, if the economy is not being supported. And so because a lot of people are like, oh, is this about the economy or is this about human rights? And I'm telling you, this is how they're two connected, and this is why you're seeing this happening on a global level, right? This is why you're saying that, because why is this happening? What does Chile have to do with Iran? Like, why does this got to do, like, how is this happening at a global scale all of a sudden? And this is the reason,
Yeah.
right? And usually when you go through a period of an economic stagnation, you come out at the end of it with more human rights. Because economic stagnation leads into more people demanding human rights, and you get more human rights at the end of it. And this is a historic trend that you're saying. Another thing I
Yeah.
want to tell you that this is also a power play between different elements within the government. Okay, so one thing that people were predicting, and the predictions was wrong, was, so you have to understand the Iranian government has many different fractions. You have to simplify it, and again, this is a simplification. You have the hardliners, right? You have the religious, hardliners, and then you have the reformers, right? And the people hate both of these. Okay, the people hate both of them, and they're like, we don't need reformers. We need you all to just go. All right. But even though these protesters want them all to go, there is a fight between the reformers and the hardliners, and some people are predicting that this, increase in price was a way for the hardliners to. Okay, so the people that decided to increase the fuel prices was the president, which is part of the reformers, right? And some people are coming up with conspiracy theories and saying, like, maybe they did this to get people in the street and make a move against the hardliners. I don't think that's accurate. I think they're just running out of money. But some people were suggesting that this would be a good time for the hardliners, which is led by Khamenei, who's the supreme religious leader, to say this was a bad idea. We shouldn't have increased the fuel prices, and make it great, and get the people to just focus all their anger at the president, which is a reformer. But Khamenei just came out and he supported the price, the increase in fuel prices, right? So all of a sudden, the hardliners, it seemed like a lot of people in the parliament were getting ready to seeing all the protests to bring the prices back down. But when the supreme religious leader comes and say I support it, they back down, because obviously the parliament in Iran was not going to make a move against what Khamenei is saying, right? He's like God in that country, right? So so the hardliner supported the decisions made by the reformers. So some people are saying that was a strategic mistake because it gives ammunition to people to be against the government as a whole rather than focusing on Rouhani, which is the president. Some people are saying, well, maybe they had no choice. Maybe for two reasons. Maybe because Khamenei would have seen that the Majlis, which is the parliament, is going to bring the price down, but they need the money, so they didn't want to do that. Or maybe bringing the price back down, given what we've seen in Lebanon and Iraq, if you give the protesters just a little bit, they're not going to be like, okay, great, we're going to go home now. All right? That's not going to happen. They're going to be like, oh, wow, we forced them to do this. Let's get more, right? So based on what they've seen in Lebanon and Iraq, I think Khamenei realized that would be a strategic mistake. So he was like, no, let's not reduce the prices. I'm gonna support the reformers so that doesn't happen, right? So again, these are all speculations, and things are changing on a minute by minute basis. So I'm gonna I'm gonna give you some updates, some videos, and I'm gonna try to be as objective as possible on my Twitter account, right? So if the people that are listening to the audio version of this, they might once the audio comes out, things might have completely changed on the ground, right? So follow me on Twitter at Armin Navabi, right? And or just search for me on Twitter, Armin Navabi, it will show up, right? And I'll try to give you as objective. Give you objective updates as much as possible, because everybody on all sides is completely biased, right? And I'm biased, right? So, like, for example, I'm seeing videos coming out of people burning out mosques and the Quran, right? Like, that's what videos coming out of Iran, people burning Qurans and mosques, right? And I'm like, okay, who's doing this? And the interesting thing is that, so when they burn the police station, people are like, yay! When they burn the banks and
government buildings,
everything, people were like, yes. But all of a sudden, a hospital was burned down, right? And then when the hospital was burned down, a lot of people were like, wait, no. And the people from the ground were like, no, that wasn't us. That's the government burning down a hospital to make us look bad.
Make us look bad.
And to be fair to the people that are saying that, I've seen videos of IRGC, right? Which is the theologically driven army of Iran, the more theologically driven branch of Iran's army. I've seen them destroy property. So, like, there's video evidence of that before in 2018. There's video evidence that they were destroying stores and everything so that people could be like, oh, no, look at what these protesters did. Oh, protesters bad, right? So I've seen them do that, but I've never seen them burn out an entire hospital, right, so far. So I'm not saying they haven't done it. I was just saying this is what people are saying, right? The protesters are saying it wasn't us. This is just meant to make us look back. I don't know who to believe. Another thing is that it's interesting because among the protesters, we have some protesters that are extremely anti-Islamic, right? Extremely anti-Islam. But we also have protesters that are against the government, but they're not necessarily anti-Islamic, right? So now that I'm seeing videos coming out that they're burning Qurans and burning mosques, right? The protesters that are anti-Islamic, they're like, yes, this is us, right? This is great. But the protesters that are anti-government, but not necessarily anti-Islamic, even some of them that are not Muslims themselves, they don't like to be so aggressively anti-Islam.
For them, saying, that's like burning down the hospital, right?
Yes, so they're saying those were also the government. Okay, so the government is burning mosques and the Quran to make people feel like, holy shit, these protesters are heretics, right? This is not us. The protesters would never offend other people's religious beliefs. So so it seems like everybody's deciding who's burning down what based on their own ideology, right? Yeah. So if it's
and the government, well, I mean, the thing is, the government can play those divisions, right?
Right.
They can make their case because their whole thing is that these are foreign protesters and they're making this happen. I want to actually. There's one of our listeners, Parsa Shumps. If you're still there, You wrote in the comment thread, you said, I talked to my friend in Iran this morning. They have been totally isolated. They shut down the whole internet.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what your friend told you? Because the people in Iran that I think a lot of us know, we haven't been able to contact. I know Armin hasn't, right? We
Yeah, I
haven't been
mean,
able to
I
contact.
have we have people that do help us a lot from Iran, and we don't a lot of the things we have no access to them anymore, right? We have no access to them anymore, and that's why Atheist Republic's content is not coming out, right? Because the internet is completely shut down in Iran, and so sorry, guys.
You don't have so. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Parsa, if you have any information, if there's anything that your friend told you that would help this conversation, because as you can see, the way that we're talking about this, I mean, we have a good idea of what's going on based on, well, I mean, especially Armin, based on like all of the people,
But
all the information that he's been receiving. But at the same time, if there is anybody who's had contact with people over there, it would be really really helpful, even if you're just an individual, to come out and let people know what's going on, because
okay.
I know for a fact that they want people to hear about it. Masih Alinejad, the author of The Wind in My Hair, and she's
Yes.
founder of My Stealthy Freedom, the whole the White Wednesdays movement against compulsory hijab in Iran. A previous guest on the show, former journalist in Iran. She has been. That's another Twitter feed to follow if you really want to know what's going on. She's talked about how there are thousands of people over there who actually want. I mean, it's way more than thousands, but who want the outside world to know what's happening in Iran, but it's just not being reported on because it's a complete information shutdown. So anything,
Yeah.
any of you who have any contact over there,
But
get in touch with
but
us. Speak it
we
in
have
the live chat.
Ali. I don't know how I'm getting all the information that is because I have contacts in
You
Iran,
have contact, yeah, I
and
know.
they are some of them are managing to like videos are coming out, and I don't know how tech savvy these people are, and I don't know how they managed to get all these videos out, given that the internet has been cut down.
I'll tell you something just from people I know in Pakistan where they had like YouTube banned for a long time and they do shut down cell phone service a lot. People in Saudi Arabia and everything. The most tech savvy people who know how to get around these restrictions are in places like Iran and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and places like that where they shut down these things commonly. Um, so the people do find a way to get online, especially in those places.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of people are asking for United States to provide. I don't know how this is possible, but this is the number one thing that people are asking me to shine a light on. I don't know if this is technically possible because I forgot which government official said that what we need is to give Iran free internet, right? I don't know how that works. Like, is that like a satellite thing, or how does that work? But people in
I know
Iran,
Elon Musk just shuttled like I think 60 satellites into space for internet for the whole. I don't know whether that's a free thing or what it is.
so
But
yeah, but this whatever government official parcel, do you know? By the way, we got a super chat from Jennifer. Thank you so much,
we
Jennifer.
did, yes,
Yeah,
Jennifer. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
But
Really,
Parsa, can you let me if you know this? I know there was one major government official that was promising that was either promising or suggesting that what United States needs to do is because internet is shut down in Iran is to provide the Iranian people free internet somehow, right?
Mhm.
And I don't want first of all, I don't know who this government official was. I saw it, but I forgot. Second, I don't know if this is even technically possible or is this just like promises that it's not going to ever be fulfilled. But what I know is it was welcomed by a lot of people in Iran, and they like this is what we need. Okay, this is a lot of protesters from Iran were suggesting that if United States could help in any way, this would be it. Like anything non-military, right, intervention, like to somehow provide if internet to the protesters, to the people, so that when the government shuts down the internet, they still are in touch. The reason why government shuts down the internet is for two reasons, and those are the exact two things that the protesters need the most. One, for them to stay in touch with each other, because they organize. They say this is where you're gonna go. This is where you're gonna be. And two is to stay in touch with the outside world, because these videos coming out, and I know when the internet gets connected, man, when the internet goes back on, we're gonna get flooded with videos. This is going to be really bad, right? Like a lot of videos are gonna come out. And Ali, I've seen with the limited connection that these people have, both the protesters and the government has come out with a lot more experience compared to 2018, right? Yeah. So the protesters, they have been prepared for this. Like they did, like the protesters, both inside and the people that provide information to them outside of Iran, they haven't been sitting by. They have been coming up with the best strategies, the best techniques, and they didn't know when the next protest is going to happen, but they were ready for when the next protest happens, to how to provide people with the information they need, right? They're telling them when you're going at the cops, have like a U formation, and this is the reason why. They're telling them to wear masks. They're telling them to bring buckets with you so that when they throw tear gases, they learned from Hong Kong. Ali, they were watching Hong Kong protests, and now like they came up with guidelines on what works best based on, because apparently the Hong Kong protesters were very, very good at coming up with the best techniques against the police, and they've been taking notes, and now they're sharing them with the protesters on the ground. So they're going with buckets, and then when they throw the tear gas, they just they take the tear gas, put it in a bucket, and they close the door, right? So the protesters seem a lot more organized, clever, and like informed on what works. But and also like they're telling doctors that support the protest, because they can't go to the hospital, because a lot of protesters, when they get injured, they can't go to the hospital, right? So they're like telling doctors to stay home and to take care of the injured at their home, so that they don't have to go to the hospital, so that they could get identified there, right? So a lot of nurses and hospitals are staying at home, and they're secretly taking in injured people to take care of them, right? So the protesters are a lot more getting a lot better, but also the government has learned. The government is learning from China. It's very interesting because the protesters are learning again from anti-Chinese protesters, and the government is learning from China on how to do crowd control. But anyway,
there's James Lauerman. Hey James, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. In the comment thread, has said that he heard that the universities still have internet access.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is.
I don't know, but it might be true. I don't know.
It might be true. So it seems like I'm kind of reading about this. One thing that is different, I think, Armin, what you talked about is the two reasons they do it is to prevent people from talking to each other, and then to prevent people from talking to the outside world. So in the past, it seems that whenever Iran has blocked internet connections, they've blocked international internet connections, so people can't communicate with the outside world. But this is one of the very rare times, maybe even the first time, I don't know if it's the first time, that they've actually blocked all internet connections, everything. So this is from Wired. I'm seeing this because that's not an easy thing to do. Apparently,
say that again. Say that last part one more time.
Oh, this is from Wired magazine, and it's apparently not an easy thing to do, to shut off all internet connections. So, because usually what they do, a lot of these countries, they'll block international internet connections, but in this case, they've done all of them, even the ones within that prevent people from communicating with each other.
Right.
So, this is actually really it's actually quite unprecedented. Obviously, the supreme leader still has internet access. He's been tweeting away. Their state media outlets are all online. So, there's something happening, but it does seem like they're learning from Iran. But it's amazing these people are still breaking through and still getting their stuff out there.
Let me tell you, though, shutting the internet, so given that they're not going to be able to shut it completely and the videos are still making it out, I think shutting down the internet on such a massive scale, I'm not sure, but I think it's a huge strategic mistake by the government. Again, I might be wrong, because they probably have thought about this a lot more than I have. But first of all, what it does is informs everybody else that is not part of the protest that this is serious, right? And also, the cost to the economy shutting down the internet is huge.
Yeah,
The
it's
numbers, the number, I forgot. I saw
it's
some
only going to make
report.
everything worse. I mean,
Yes.
what like because you have this is I guess this is a question. How selective can you be? According to this article I'm reading, it seems like it's very difficult to be selective where you're cutting off all internet connections from people to
Yes.
each other, but at the same time, all the banks are still in business,
Yeah.
which require that.
Yeah. The
All of the
banks need that. Is gonna be.
travel
Yes.
schedules, like all of these, there's so many things that rely
Yes.
on internet use. It must everything has to grind to a stop, and this is why this is so confusing.
Yeah,
I don't
this
know
is
how
gonna
far
hurt
they've
their own
gone.
income. Like shutting down the internet is so bad for their own revenue, the government's own revenue. This is like these are the numbers that people have assessed independent sources is huge, right? So I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to shut down the internet. But again, it's not going to achieve. The videos are going to, like, even if people don't get the videos out now, the videos are going to make it out at some point. It's going to signal to the rest of the country that the protesters must be succeeding at being intimidating the government if they have taken such a drastic measure. And again, so and they're not going to be able to shut it, to completely close everything, right? So um,
There's
yeah.
there's no good options. So here's the thing: why is so much activism online right now? Is because you can sit in your home and you can just kind of tweet all your activism away and you can do it. But what used to happen in the past when there wasn't any internet? People used to go out on the streets. So what happened? What's another consequence of shutting down the internet? You push people out on the fucking streets. Like that's what's happening. I mean,
Right.
this is a quote from a guy Shabazz from Freedom House, and he's saying, "quote This is a very blunt attempt to control the information space in Iran by simply just denying individuals access to all information."
Right.
And it's not going to work. Information is going to continue to spread by other means, and actually, sometimes shutting off the internet just drives people to the streets.
Right. Right.
Right? So that made me. It's just adding to when we're talking about they have nothing left to lose. Now you've starved them already. I mean, they don't have jobs. Inflation is through the roof. They can't afford any gas anymore because like gas prices are at like 300% higher. The food, all of this stuff, the stuff being rationed, and then now you cut them off from all connections to the outside world. So now you completely isolate them.
Mm.
You totally isolate them. What's going to happen? Like,
Right.
it's amazing that, and the only reason this could be happening is, I mean, this is not a dumb regime. It's not like they know the consequence. They don't know the consequences of this. The only reason this could be happening is because they don't have any other choice.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
even the lesser of the two evils, that the
So,
bad, they're having to choose between a bad decision for them and a
so
worse decision for them. And even if they choose, like either way, they're. I mean, this is what makes this, I think, very different. We don't know what's going on. Again, I don't know if it's as bad as 2009. I don't know if it's definitely not catching that kind of attention in the international news. But whatever's happening right now, the circumstances in which it's happening, the nature of it, the fact that it's poorer people protesting, the fact that it's non-Tehranians, people in Shiraz and other cities protesting, the fact that they actually really have nothing left to lose. They're rock bottom people who are coming out there, and the fact that the Iranian government is more vulnerable than it probably ever has been in recent history. All of this comes together to show that this is different.
yeah.
Doesn't mean that they're gonna topple the government successfully. We don't know, but it's different.
So
It's much more intense than what it's been in the past.
so the reason why, by the way, Trump sanctions are working is because the government before had the option. So if you want to make maximum revenue, there's this, and you have oil, right? There's a sweet spot on exactly how much oil to sell, right? If you go more, it's going to increase the supply too much. It's going to bring the prices that too low, so it's going to reduce the revenue. But if you go lower, then you're selling less oil, and the revenue you're making out of it is less. There's always a sweet spot to have the how much oil, and that's why OPEC, they get together, and that's why the whole point of OPEC is for them to decide what that sweet spot is, right? But so you can stay at that sweet spot, but then when you're desperate for cash and you need money like right now, like holy shit, we need money, like we need, like there's some We needed emergency situation. Countries that have oil, they always had that option to go above that point and just sell more oil, even though it's not strategically a good idea. But if they're desperate, they could just sell more oil, and they could just relieve the situation in that situation for a short amount of time, right? The reason why Iran's government is not able to do that is because of the sanctions, right? So they have no money and they need money, apparently desperate for money, so they're just like increasing the price of fuel, which is very, very interesting that a country with this much oil, like that means like the tight grip that Trump had managed that wanted to put around Iran for it not to be able to sell its oil, it worked. Like they cannot sell their own oil, right? And it works. So they're going to their people. So that's one thing.
They're trying to recover that revenue from their own people.
Own people. But another thing I want to point out is that there's a huge debate or fight or debate, depending on how intense you want to make it seem, between the anti-government activists, right, on how violent they want to get with this, right? So how many people are going to support destroying property and how many people are not going to support that, right? And it seems to be like the people that may like, hey, let's go protest, but hey, let's not destroy stuff. It seems like the people are so tired that those voices are now being silent, right? Like what I've noticed that even so, there used to be two camps, right? Be like, hey, let's have peaceful protests, Gandhi style, civil disobedience method, right? And other people are like, no, fuck that shit. Get us some guns. Like we need like other people are like, what we're missing in this equation right now is guns in the hands of people, right? So we had two philosophies, right? And that's that. What I'm noticing is that because previous protests didn't break down this government, a lot of the people that were like, "Hey, we need just civil disobedience, Gandhi-style protest," it worked so many times in the 20th century. With we had Mandela, we had Gandhi, we had Martin Luther King. That changed regimes, that changed governments, that
nonviolent,
that forced governments. A lot of black people in the United States went to restaurants and they kept getting arrested, but they showed up more. That changed policies, of U.S. government. So it worked. So we could do the same thing. And given the previous protests in Iran haven't worked, these people now, if they say the same thing today, they're going to get attacked by a lot of other activists online. Like your Twitter, like if you say like, hey, we need peaceful protests, a lot of other anti-government activists online, they're going to come at you. They're like, fuck that. We need to take this government down by all means necessary. By all means necessary. And I think I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong right now. I'm just telling you what's happening, right? It's just the level of frustration and the impatience, the amount of people are running out of, patience. They're like, just drop, we need to find a way to destroy things. We need to find a way to kill people. We need to find a way to fight back. All right. So this is now the new, and I think but so Parso was asking about the same thing.
Yeah, I have so Faraskiani's got an interesting question. This is something I wanted to ask you, Armin.
Right.
But I do want to set this up with a comment as well. So Faraz is saying, I'm so upset the West is universally silent and the media doesn't cover protests. Yeah, I hear you. I feel the West is by and large reluctant to be used as a pawn of the regime propaganda. Regime will delegitimize protesters as puppets of the West. So this was a really big conversation actually during the Obama time, and in retrospect, the people have all kinds of different opinions about whether in 2009, like for him coming out and not vocally supporting the protesters, whether that did more harm or whether it did good. So the question here, I think at that time the thinking was that you had the Iraq War, it was a very new thing. Saddam had come down like just about 6 years before those protests happened in 2009, and there was this. They thought that they're going to be greeted as liberators. They thought that, okay, mission accomplished once the thing comes down. But it turned out that they didn't really like the Americans either, and there was this insurgency against the Americans for doing that. So the gamble that they took during the Obama time in 2009 was that, well, these protesters, there's a lot of conspiracies that the protesters are supported by foreigners or funded by foreigners. So first of all, we don't want to give the regime the power of enforcing that narrative, reinforcing that narrative that these people are being supported by America. That was one thing. The other thing is that these protesters, they may hate what's happening with the Iranian regime, and at that time it was the election issue with that Mousavi, versus Ahmadinejad. And so there was, so they didn't want, the U.S. didn't want it. They thought, okay, fine, they don't like the Iranian regime, they're protesting against that. But if the U.S. comes in, then we're going to unite them all together because they're going to also be against us.
Well, that's what I used to hear. So sorry, finish your question.
No. So I'm saying that's what we heard before. But right. Again, as Armin is saying, in Iran, you ask 10 different people to get 10 different opinions, right? So we don't. But in retrospect.
But there is trends though, right? So what you just said, I heard that more in 2018 than now. Okay. In 2018, that line of reasoning, like, hey, this should be from the ground. This is the people's revolution. U.S. stay the fuck out of this. We got
but it's not just that.
Let me finish.
Yeah, go on.
We heard some people say that, and then some other people were saying, like some other people from Iran were saying, no, United States, we need United States help. Please help us. We need your support. And some people were like, no, this is our revolution. Keep the U.S. out. If you bring the U.S. in, then the narrative will be that this is foreign intervention, right?
Right, so, which is what the regime wants.
Yeah, but that argument, I don't see it that much anymore, okay? Because
that's what I'm saying.
The reason why you're seeing that less is still there is because, well, what happened? 2018 protests came and went, and the government is still in power, right? So now in 2019, they're like, you know what? If the devil himself wants to come and help us, we'll take it, right? Like, because of the amount of impatience and because of people desperately wanting to topple this government, they're like, I even hear people saying, you know what? We know Trump doesn't care about the people. We know that United States doesn't care about the people. They put the sanctions, but we'll take their help because we'll take anyone's help. We'll take
There's another reason. Yeah, there's another reason for that too. I think the thinking on that has changed, and I completely agree with you. I think the thinking of that has changed, and maybe when people think hindsight is 2020, Obama should have done more. Maybe for that time, Obama did the right thing. Who knows? But for now, the regime is going to accuse them of being foreigners anyway. They're going to do that anyway.
No, that's what I was going to say. Exactly.
If you're getting those,
I wrote that down. I wrote exactly that to say that. Yeah.
You might as well take the help.
No.
Right? So is it?
So they say exactly. So let's say there's a situation where people come out the street, and it was not because of the sanction, and they had no support from the U.S. government or any other foreign actors. Iran's government will still say this is foreign intervention. These are foreign agents. This is Zionist infiltrators into our country. This is not the demand of the people, right? They will say that. So people are like, well, fuck it, we might as well get their help.
It's not like it's going to change the narrative. Like, if you want to push that narrative, let's make it real. Let's at least take advantage of it.
Right.
Like, but let's take it. It would be amazing if they did that. The other thing is that I think there is a space, like, when you were saying earlier, and this goes to what Faraz was talking about, and I think Muskal was also saying, or Beej was saying, how can people help? Right now, there is a way to help. You don't have to. The U.S. doesn't even have to overtly do anything to go in, but there could be covert help, like this whole providing internet access.
That would be the main thing. That's the cheapest way. The cheapest and the most efficient way right now to help the Iranian people is for the United States. Again, I will tell you this. I will tell you that Trump is a war criminal that deserves to, rot in jail somewhere because of what he did with Yemen and many other places, okay? I will tell you that. But at the same time, if he follows through and does this and somehow manages to give internet, free access to internet to Iranian people, that would be the most help. That would be the most influential thing he could do with a fraction of the cost of any kind of military intervention. And if he does that, I will call him a war criminal while give him credit for doing something like
this. Imagine if Trump of all people actually ends up doing something useful that helps the Iranian people topple their government.
I will give him credit if he does that.
And it happens in a way that it didn't happen in Iraq or Libya or any of these other disaster areas before. Right. And I mean, that would be that would actually play well for him too. I just have a feeling that even if he does a half good thing, he's gonna fuck it up somehow. Like he has this thing, right? He could, all he has to do was talk about the economy for the rest of the year, and then he could win re-election, but he can't do that.
All right, let's not go into that election stuff, but I'm just saying, if he does give free internet to Iran, I will give him credit for that, because that would be the best thing he could do, okay? And maybe this is what people should do. People should keep tweeting at, not at Trump, because his Twitter is so big, he's not going to see it, but maybe some, foreign ministry officials and stuff, just tweet at them like,
Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley.
No, they can't. They can't do that, because that would be like a private company intervening in
all kinds of shit.
No, but I think
stuff that the U.S. government doesn't even know. They understand.
Okay, fine. Anybody, just tweet at people. Tweet at Zuck or anybody. No, he's not going to say
Zuckerberg or Elon Musk.
Just get a hashtag. There must be a hashtag free internet for Iran. I think there is. There must be a hashtag for free internet in Iran. Get that going. I think that would be the most influential thing to do with a very, very, very low cost. Okay, but here's the thing. I think what I noticed is a lot of the people, at least to be fair, the people that are wanting to topple the government, that are part of the Atheist Republic community, okay, at least those people, to me, it seems like they are smart enough to know that when it comes to United States trying to help the protesters, if they do that, it's not about human rights, okay? The United States doesn't give a shit about human rights. If they gave a shit about human rights, they wouldn't be supporting Saudi Arabia, okay? This is their own agenda. This is their own, because they're against Iran. The United States government will watch people in Iran starve to death if it means that they're going to protest. They will push for that, okay? So it's not that
if they could find a way, if it holds potential to topple the regime, they will do that.
So it's not out of their kindness of their heart, like, oh, the poor Iranian people, let's go help them, right? So there's this understanding, like, okay, yeah, we know that the United States government doesn't care about us, but strategically right now, given the situation that we have, if they could give us free internet, that would be very helpful, right? So this is like kind of like a maturity, like political maturity of people understanding that we'll take the help of people that we know don't care about us, right? So if
Beach Price is saying that there is a hashtag. It's hashtag Internet for Iran on Twitter. Internet for Iran. That's internet, the number 4 Iran on Twitter. So Faraz is saying, Beach is saying, just flood the internet. Just
flood great. Twitter and Facebook. Thank you so much for looking into that. Okay, so I'm gonna start using that.
So if we can do that, I really think like getting some of these public influencers out there, like Elon Musk and people like Mark Zuckerberg and people, getting those people, Jack Dorsey of Twitter, getting. I don't know how involved they want to be, but just to see if they can. If that really is the best way to do it. If you want to support them, but you don't want to risk all the downsides of foreign, people supporting protesters in Iran, then this is something that you can do.
Well, I don't know if that's the best way, but that's what the protesters are saying. That's what the protesters are saying, that would be the best way to help them. So, that's from the people on the ground, right? So,
right.
If you could get that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what do you think, Armin, is going to, because this is the next part of what we want to talk about,
right?
With the time that we have left, what do you think is going to happen next? And this is obviously purely speculative.
Oof. Yeah, I
But
try not to do
what happens now? Do
that.
you think there's a few more rounds? I am, like I said, my part. I think that the factors, like if you look at the people who are protesting this time, it's different. If you look at the status of vulnerability of Iran, the government right now, it's very, very different from the last few times.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the reaction of the Iranian government to these protests, that is,
Definitely.
markedly different
Yes.
from the past. They're definitely benefiting from, none of this stuff getting. There's no coverage. There's no international. There really is no. I mean, it's absolutely insane. There are two major governments in the world, Lebanon and Iraq. The governments have resigned, right?
Right.
And it's
yeah,
like
sure, like not. Okay, let me just clarify this. The
okay,
people in
clarify.
the Lebanon and Iraq that have resigned were mere puppets that would have been replaced by other puppets.
But but Armin, it's still significant.
And yeah,
Yes,
it is still
everybody there is
significant.
always a puppet. Yeah.
No. Okay, but it is. They're more of a puppet than the people in Iran, right? Like Hariri is
I see what
definitely
you're
was a
saying. Yes. Okay.
the thing. But and also what I noticed is that the protesters in Lebanon and Iraq were mature enough to know that this was just like a rearranging of not really changing the government. It was just a rearrangement of people, and that's why the protesters were like, yeah, no, sorry, not good enough, right?
Yeah. So it continues.
The protests continue in Lebanon and Iraq because they do realize these resignations, like the people that they want to bring on in power are going to still be chosen by the same bureaucracy, by the same people in power that they're against. They're like, no, we don't want you to just move people around. We want you to completely change the system, right? So that's why the people. But I agree with you. It's still significant, given that they managed to do anything. But
Yeah.
it will be. It's less significant than removing like somebody as big as, I don't know, like Khamenei or something like that. Like
Yeah.
this is right. So and again, a lot of these puppets that I'm talking about in Lebanon and Iraq are puppets of Iran.
Right. So, but the question, right,
Yeah.
is that what do you think happens from you? There's another kind of interesting. Well, that's another question I have for you. But what do you think happens when they're considering the differences between this and previous protests? So you already said that yes, the people have to win once, where the government has to win every single time.
Right.
But what are you seeing this time?
I usually don't do predictions because I could tell you.
Of course you do. You do it all the time.
No, I do scenarios. It's easy. Okay, here's a trick.
Okay,
here's a trick for you not to get clips people playing like 1 year from now, like, Armin, you said this and it didn't happen, so why should I ever trust you again, right? The trick of never falling for that is, instead of predicting something, give multiple things that could happen, right? And nobody could then ever use that against you, right? Because if anybody, let me tell you something. Here's another trick.
Who cares what they use against you? Just, okay, fine, give scenarios and then say, tell me which one you think is most likely.
No, but here's another thing. Anybody that tells you that this is what's going to happen, don't listen to those people, because they don't know these things. Even if they end up being right, okay? If people give you certain outcomes, don't believe those people. There's so many external factors that are at play that it's impossible, unless like you're AI or something, it's impossible for you to come up with an accurate prediction of what's going to happen, right? And anybody that gives you predictions and they're certain about their predictions, don't trust those people, even if by chance they happen to be right, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so to tell me your non-prediction scenarios.
Well, okay, so the non-prediction scenarios, right? So let's look at all the scenarios and see, and maybe Parsa could help us add to the scenarios, right? Then think which one is more likely. The scenario number one: government will completely demolish all the protesters. 2 weeks from now, will be no protests, and people will become demoralized. of doing any other protest, because they see like, look, we tried this in 2009, we tried this in 2018, and now we're trying this in 2019, and all we have to show for is more dead people, and and more destructions in the streets. We never so maybe less people will show up in the street next time there's a protest, because like, what do we have to show for with all these protests? So that's and
Yeah.
that would be the most best scenario for the government, right? And this is the scenario that they're hoping for, and that's why they're going out full force out right from the beginning, so that to shut it down early, to demoralize people, and there's no protest ever again, right? Scenario number two, and scenario number two would be that the protest will still be shut down, and it will die out within a few days, but people are not demoralized, and the next round of protests that happens 2 or 3 months from now is going to be bigger than this one, so people could see that there's a progression. Like, even though the protests didn't work, it seems like they are pushing back against the government stronger every time, and at some point the progression is going to be so high that everything is going to fall, and they're going to take over. So even though the government won this round, we're becoming better, stronger every time. And obviously number three is like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the time where the level of aggression from both sides is so much that it's going to go spiral out of control. It's just going to be non-stop protests. The government at some point is going to be be forced into give in to some of the demands. But as soon as they give in to some of the demands, people are going to be like, yeah, no, not good enough. And not only it's not going to get people to go home, the fact that they do give in to their demands is going to motivate people to keep asking for more. And it's just going to become full-on bloodbath, and then the government is going to call out its forces from Iraq. It's going to call in Hashd Shabi, like, holy shit, this is getting too crazy. We don't have enough forces. We need to bring in the Hashd Shabi from Iraq. We need to bring in Hezbollah from Lebanon. We need to bring the Fatimiyun from Pakistan and Afghanistan, and go on full force. And it's just going to be like a couple of, I don't know, months or years of war. And this scenario probably will happen only if, because the reason why I'm very skeptical about this last scenario is because the government has so much firepower, right, compared to the people. So I don't know how it could escalate to this level. The only way that it could escalate to this level is only two things could make this last scenario happen. Either people somehow get access to guns in some way, or you have some generals or some people from the Artesh breaking ranks and trying to take advantage of the opportunity and try to have a coup d'etat, right? Try to have a coup, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that maybe the second one is more likely, right? And again, we have to remember that the two main military sources in Iran is, one of them is the IRGC, which is the Sepah, which is more ideologically driven, and then you have the Artesh, which was which predates the Islamic Revolution of 1979. It comes back from the Shah's era. And the whole point of having the IRGC is to make sure that they don't ever start a coup, right?
Yeah.
So if
So you think the second scenario?
yeah, I mean, if you can find some military, again, let me know in the live chat if you disagree with this or not. If situation escalates, because the people don't have the firepower to keep on going, but the only scenario that I can see that might tip everything towards the people is that if it keeps escalating to a level where some general or maybe even the people from lower ranks of both the Sepah and the Artesh keep saying, like, you know what, I'm going to join the people, either for opportunistic reasons or from ideological reasons, be like, we're killing too many of our own people. I joined the military because I wanted to kill Iran's enemies. I didn't want to join the military to point the guns at my own people.
My own people.
What the hell? This is not okay. And if more and more of them start breaking ranks and joining the people, that could tip the powers towards the
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
That's the only
What
scenario.
what happened to the Basiji? Are they still a thing, or
The Basij
you're
is
not
part of the
mentioning them?
IRGC. Okay, so the Basij is
Yeah,
like
but they're separate, right? I mean, they're
no,
like
no, no,
the
no. Okay, the Basij has okay. So again, so we have the Artesh, which was used to be
the
pre-Islamic revolution,
pre-revolution from the Shah.
pre-revolution.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The IRGC has five sections, right? You
Yeah.
have the Air Force, the Ground Force, and the Navy, right? But the two parts that gets the most media attention is the Quds army and the Basij, right?
The siege. So
So
IRGC, for those who don't know, it actually stands for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps,
yeah,
Corps something, right? Like, so
yes,
it's a, yeah, it's a they're actually connected to the
which was
revolution.
made by Khomeini originally to as an anti-coup measure, but it grew to something so much bigger. It grew to something so big that it owns a lot of Iran's economy, right? They have
Mm.
monopoly over a lot of Iran's economy. So usually they're on the news because of the two last ones, either because of the Quds. The Quds army is Iran's kind of like CIA and foreign intervention, and that's why the Quds army gets a lot of attention because it's basically Iran's way of meddling in its neighbors, in Iraq, in Lebanon, everywhere, right? Soleimani is like a national hero for all the people that like the regime. And the Basij gets a lot of attention because Basij are the people that show up in the streets and they're not wearing any military, clothing, and they just show up and just beat the shit out of the protesters or anybody that is acting un-Islamically. So that's
Mm.
why they get a lot of attention as well, right? So they are
Okay.
pretty much active. The part okay, so the IRGC is under the part of the hardliners, right? But there are some
Yeah.
other, like these are the two main forces, but there are other forces as well. Like we have Nireh Intizami, we have the Vezarat Etelat. So the Nireh Intizami is kind of like the police. That's under and Vezarat Etelat, which is the intelligence ministry. Those two are are under Rouhani. They are not under Khamenei, right? So it's very interesting because a lot of people are like, "Oh, the reformers are so nice." But if you look at what the Vezarat Talat and what the Nireh Intizami, what Rouhani's forces do to people like, look, the reformers are also extremely brutal to people, and the intelligence ministry, which is supposed to be under Rouhani, and Rouhani, who's supposed to be a reformer, is working actively with IRGC to find the leaders on the ground, the people that they're supposed to be arresting or intimidating. And people are like, look, they're working with each other. So don't tell us, like, oh, reformers, hardliners. They're all the same. Let me see what Parsa has to say because he has some good insight. Parsa, if you have anything that you want me to read,
Yeah.
use tag us or use those red balloons or something, right?
Red balloons. Red balloons.
No, they're
I
they're
have another
acceptable.
question for you, Armin.
Yeah, good.
There's another thing that's related to this that recently happened
Right.
regarding Iran that's interesting. We have to talk about that here as well. With the time that we have left, which is about, like, I think we have about 20 more minutes. So, and we've been incorporating some patron questions or listener questions the entire time. So we'll totally keep on doing that right now. So if you have any additional questions, it's tag sexual jihadists. I keep saying that, tag secular jihadists, and we'll get to as many as we can. So, leaked cables from Iran, right? From around starting around 2003. After the war, the Iraq War, over an extended period of time, translated into Farsi, translated from Farsi, right? And they were someone from within Iran, it seems, has leaked these cables to the Intercept. So I think they went to Murtaza Hussain, who's our friend Murtaza Hussain. We've had some run-ins with him in the past. He's done. I mean, he basically did all the work on them, and they showed that Iran actually really has a lot of control over Iraq's government. This is something we kind
Yes,
of always knew.
we knew that, but we have confirmation now.
Yeah, so there's confirmation. So do you know about these leak cables, right? Or
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
read about
yeah,
them?
yeah. I saw that,
So they
but
show
this is
like there
something
was an
that
immense amount of
yeah,
Iranian
but
influence that was
but
in
it
Iraq.
came out, and I was like, yeah, we know this. But then I also realized that for news agencies to be able to verify these things that we already knew, there needs to be a leak like this. So at first
Yeah.
I was like, well, really, you guys just figured this out? But then I also like, okay, fine,
Yeah, no,
uh,
it's not just figuring it out. It's like people knew they'd figured it out, but
right?
to actually see it
No,
right in writing,
Iran,
it's pretty
it,
crazy. I mean, the 700 pages of intelligence documents.
I,
This is something that came. These are confidential cables and documents from. And here's the okay. Here's a real story. So yeah, we already knew that they had a lot of influence. The question is that who in Iran's Ministry of Intelligence, right,
mm,
has leaked these documents to the Intercept?
right.
Like who is there? What is happening? And I mean, we've heard about like this fracturing within the establishment, within the regime, and everything. But how did these things get out? These are super confidential
Yeah.
documents that are directly from Iran's Ministry of Intelligence. They weren't just released the way that they are. They were translated
Hmm.
and then given to the Intercept
Well,
from what I'm reading.
that's
Correct me
amazing.
if I'm wrong, but
But
that's what it seems like.
I don't
So
know if
that
it.
I think is the main story.
Yeah, but
700 pages of
I don't know
documents.
if it was from the same leak or another leak. But another information that just came out of that was that Iran is actively trying to hire former CIA agents in Iraq.
Okay, so yes, this actually was in the document. So what happened was that there were a lot of Iraqis who were working with the CIA, right, during the U.S. The presence in Iraq and
Yeah.
the Iraq War, and eventually what happened is Iran poached them.
Yes.
So now they are, and there is evidence that there are many Iraqis. These documents actually reveal that there are many Iraqis who were once working with the CIA,
CIA.
or they are now working with Iranian intelligence. And
Probably
this is
the
coming from
documents
the
is
Ministry of
probably yeah,
Intelligence,
yeah,
by the
yeah.
way.
But this is pretty. I mean, that's pretty smart for Iran to be hiring former CIA agents in Iraq, right? But let me tell you, the reason why Iran has such a powerful grip over, the I don't see this from a conspiracy. It's not a a lot of people when they say deep state, they're talking about conspiracy theories. But before these conspiracy theories, deep state was a real thing. Like it's a real thing. You're just talking about the technocrats that don't change. That's all it is. Forget the conspiracy theories. We're just talking about the technocrats behind the people that get elected that don't change, right? The reason
Yeah.
why Iran has such a huge, influence over the people in Iraq, over the deep state of Iraq, behind the people that are keep getting moved around, is because Iran was working on Iraq way before Saddam was being removed. Like the people that Iran has now in Iraq are the same people. A lot of them are the same people that Iran was gaining influence on against Saddam, right, for a very
Yeah.
long time, right? And it's very easy given the theological closeness Iran's Shia regime has with a lot of Shias in Iraq, right? And how a lot of people wanted to lose within Iraq knew that the Shia ideology in Iraq is such a great way for them to take opportunity of the mass support of the people of Iraq for like Shia clerics if the right opportunity presents itself. So for many years they were preparing for something like the removal of Saddam, and eventually it paid off big time. But another thing I want to point out, I want to bring back the conversation back to Iran, is with regards to the predictions that you mentioned. One thing that I can't wrap my head around is that the plans that the people in Iran that support removing the government, right? Yeah, and I know I think I'm going to get criticized for this by a lot of Iranians, but I don't know how they're going to be able to manage the country after. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. I just can't wrap my head around it, right? Like if this
Yeah.
government falls, what is like? I think a lot of the scenarios of what's going to happen right after, to me, seems a bit too optimistic. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong, But the idea is that when this government falls, what's going to happen, when and if this government falls, what's going to happen is we're going to have secular democracy. Yay! Congratulations, Iran, you made it. But how realistic is that, given that, one, at least 10 million I think at least 10 million people in Iran. Again, this is a completely, this is a hypothesis when I say 10 million, right? So if you say, like, Armin, where are your sources for this? This is just an educated guess. I have no sources for this, and nobody has any sources for this. This is just an educated guess, so take it with a grain of salt. It could be completely wrong. It's not a theory, it's a hypothesis. But I think at least 10 million people in Iran support the Islamic Republic, okay, out of 80 million, okay, at least. Where are these people going to go? Like, they're not, they want an Islamic regime. Like, what are you going to do with them, right? And out of these 10 million, how many of them are willing to die for Khamenei? Like, let's be just the most conservative possible. Like, if you look at the protesters that are coming out now, right? They're a fraction of the population. They're a very small fraction of the population, but it's still significant because a small fraction of the population, if it's big enough, it could make a big change. Like, even in 1979 revolution, the Islamic Revolution, which brought Khomeini, that was a small, like, if you look at the streets, you show how many people showed up in the street, you're like, holy shit, that's a lot of people. But if you look at the total population of the country, it's still a tiny fraction of the entire country, right? But you can still topple the government even if you're a small fraction of the of the entire population. If it's big enough, you could still topple governments with that. What I'm saying is that, yes, we have a lot of protesters now in the streets, but out of that 10 million, if 100,000 of that 10 million are willing to become martyrs for Khamenei or for an Islamic Republic, how is it possible in that situation to have a secular democracy? That's like an army, right? 100,000. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
but this is why I think this stuff is way too complicated to speculate about. Even though I know I asked you to speculate, but so just because there are people who want an Islamic Republic at this point doesn't mean that those people would want to support this regime if they can't afford gas, if they're unemployed, if inflation is through the roof, and if they feel like the Iranian government is lying by saying, oh, we're going to give 60 million people oil rations or gas rations, and they're doing it by, like, increasing oil prices and all of that crap. So they may even see the government as, even if they support the Islamic Republic, those 10 million, they're not going to have straight cut answers to this stuff. I mean, there's also pro-reform people, there's pro-,
but Ali, it's more than that. Like what I hear from the people, they call themselves Barandazan, which are pro-toppling the government, and I'm pro-toppling the government, right? Mm-hmm. But the concern from some people is that, look, people say, like, look, when we remove this government, people are going to get together, and if we have a secular democracy where everybody is represented, people are going to be happy, and people are going to just accept this new secular democracy, right? Okay. This is what is being told to us right now, right, by a lot of protesters, and I'm hoping they're right, and I'm hoping that's true. I just don't know how likely that is, right? It just seemed a bit too optimistic, given that, here's the thing, it's not just the religious fundamentalists that are not going to be happy with a secular democracy. We also have the Turks that might want to become independent, and the Kurds that might want to become independent, and then the Sistan Balochistan that might become independent, and then the Arabs in Khuzestan that might want to become independent. And so like a lot of people like,
there's a question about Khuzestan here too, so I guess
Khuzestan, somebody asked about Khuzestan. Okay, so people are like, okay, look, if we remove this government, the country is going to just turn into a whole bunch of small little pieces. It's just going to, and because Iranians have a lot of national pride, that's the worst scenario for them. Like, they're like, no, we will. Some people are saying, like, we'll keep this government if it will prevent the country being turned into pieces. But a lot of people are saying that are pro the toppling the government are going to say like, no, that's never going to happen. That's Armin, you're pushing government narratives. You're pushing government propaganda, right? They're like, Armin, what you're saying is what the Islamic Republic of Iran is trying to tell to people, to spread fear, so that people don't protest. Be like, hey, listen, yeah, you might hate us, but we're the only thing that is keeping the country together. If we remove us, your country is going to turn into 7 different pieces, right? And they're like, Armin, why would you push that narrative? That's the Islamic Republic's narrative. And they push back against what I have to say is like, listen, if we have a secular democracy, the reason why the Turks want to have their own independence, the reason why the Kurds want to have their own independence, and the Arabs want to become independent from Iran, and the Sistan Balochistan, the reason is because we have such a shit government. If we have a secular democracy where everyone is represented, they would want to stay with Iran. They would want to stay with Iran, and they would not want to become separate from Iran, and they're going to stay, and it's going to become one great utopia. And I'm like, maybe not, because at least the Kurds have been wanting independence for, like, the dream of independence for the Kurds, for example, predates the Islamic Republic, right? They've been dreaming about this since World War I. Right, to have it for them to have a land free from any of these 4 countries, free from Iraq or Iran or Turkey or Syria, that they could call Kurdistan. So I don't know how good of a secular democracy are you going to give the Kurds for them to be like, not take advantage of the situation and be like, yes, this is now Kurdistan. Sorry, goodbye, see you later. And also at least the Arab part, which is of Iran, which is Khuzestan, a lot of them, to be fair, have anti-Persian sentiments, right? There's a lot of racism. A lot of Persians hate Arabs, and a lot of Arabs hate Persians. So even with a secular democracy, a lot of those Arabs might be like, yeah, thank you, but no thank you. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm wrong about this. Correct me. I'm not trying to. I know every time I talk about this, I lose Iranian fans. The reason why I lose Iranian fans is because saying this might demoralize some people. Might try to from protesting. But I'll tell you this: this government has to fall. Okay. I am one of those Barandozan people. So even if I'm showing concern about what's going to happen after this government falls, I'll support anything that topples this government, right? But just forgive me for showing concerns for what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we have very little time left, so really, really quick questions. So the Beej is asking, is it possible the government sections might turn on the government and stand with the people?
That was what we were talking about.
So we saw, by the way, there were some videos like this I saw in the protests from 2009.
No,
and also a couple where
2018. You mean 2018?
Yeah, 2018. Yeah, 2018. Sorry.
So
where there were
people burning the Basij card. Right. So
they were cornering like these Basij people. They're cornering the IRGC people, and they were saying, and then these people were showing. They're like, okay, no, you know what? I can't fire on you. I can't. So they're trying to get the sympathies of
that these, is going to be the key. That is going to be the key, okay? And I'll tell you, to whoever is a Barandozam, to all the people that want to topple this government, you should not see the Basiji people, maybe the high ups see them as your enemy, but these low-ranking Basij people or Nire Intizami,
try to win them over.
You have to try to win them over. You cannot see them as the enemy. If you want to topple this government, you have to win their hearts and minds, okay? And this is what Khomeini realized. Khomeini was clever enough when they were coming. He was like, "Oh, put flowers in the, in the 1979 revolution." Khomeini was clever enough to tell the protesters to go take flowers and put it in the guns of the soldiers. Just put the flowers inside the gun hole or whatever that is. I don't know what they're called. I don't know. But okay. So that was a strategy. But then, by the way, I'm not defending Khomeini, because once he took over, he started killing everybody left and right. There was mass.
Armin is not defending Khomeini.
No, I'll get accused. But Ali, I do get accused. You have no. Here's another problem with the opposition groups in Iran. Okay, this is a major cancer that is making all the anti-Islamic Republic opposition groups, they're not united because they keep accusing each other of being puppets of the Islamic Republic. I have been accused, Ali, I have been accused of being an
Okay.
agent of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And every Masih Ali Najad has been accused of that, and I don't know what this. She's been accused more than anyone else of being a puppet of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Anybody that just says or does something that remotely disagrees with your way of removing the government, or maybe is not completely certain about removing government, they get accused of being puppets of the Islamic Republic, and there's a lot of division between anti-government forces, anti-government activists, right? And if they want to see any hope for removing the government, they have to just cut out all the conspiracy theories and start getting united. That's one thing that I'll be more hopeful with this whole movement working if I see less conspiracy theories and more unity among all. Unity, by the way, not unity among everybody, because there are some forces that are worse than the Islamic Republic. And I just want to warn people not to share anything that comes out from Mariam Rajavi, okay? The MEK,
Who?
Mariam Rajavi, you don't know her?
Oh, no, I don't know her.
Let me
No.
see. So do you know the MEK?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, so the Mujahideen Khalq, do you know that? Do you know
Yeah, I
that?
know.
Okay. So that's Mariam Rajavi. Okay, ever since her husband either was killed or disappeared, she's now leading that organization. Okay, so they are also against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they were supported by United States for some fucked up reason. They're a terrorist group that Rudy Giuliani supported and John Bolton supported. They got a lot of funding, but they're a terrorist group. They're going to try to take advantage of these protests to become more relevant. They have virtually zero support among the Iranian people. If there's anything the Iranian people could be united on, is their hatred for the MEK, is their hatred for the Mujahideen Khalq, and is their hatred for Mariam Rajavi. But because they're very well funded, they have a lot of powerful social media presence. Be careful not to retweet them. They are not part of the opposition that is supported by the people in Iran. They are hated more than the Islamic Republic. And one way to figure out if the tweets that you're posting is from the MEK, if you see too much yellow in the signs that people are holding, do not retweet those. If you see a lot of yellow, if people are wearing a lot of yellow colors, or if they're holding signs that are yellow, then there's likely they're the MEK.
So
Do not
very
share
complicated.
that. Do not
Yeah.
share that.
Okay. So anyway, we're gonna go. Okay, Armin, quick answers now. Quick answers. Okay, we've got like 3-4 more minutes.
Okay.
All right. So Afif Kaja is asking: are protesters rejecting the Islamic Republic because they want democracy and secular humanism in Iran, or are they just dissatisfied with the current regime? I think you've talked about this earlier. That
yes, and yes.
both,
To both.
both,
and so yes to both of them, and there's a lot of overlap between the people that are. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Faraz is answering. Faraz Khan is saying they want a secular democracy for the most part. Some want monarchy back. That's a monarchy of the Shah.
Okay, that's a big. Okay, the monarchy backbone is another major disagreement people are having. Okay, so if you listen to the protest chants that people are having, right now, there's more than 100 cities in Iran. Guys, this is how intense the situation is. The reports are that more than 100 cities in Iran are having protests. That's insane. I do not know if I should believe that or not, okay? But what is also being reported is that you can't find one city that at least one of the chants is not Reza Shah, Ruhat Shah, or or demanding for the son of the former, the prince, Reza Pahlavi to come, who is right now in the United States, to come back, for him to lead. Like, they want the Pahlavi regime, the monarchy, to come back to Iran, because they have these memories, right, of what the Pahlavi regime used to be like before the Islamic Republic, right? So some people are saying that is the main opposition group, and that's what everybody should be uniting around. And some people are saying, no, fuck that. We don't want a monarch. We don't want any type of monarchy. We want a secular democracy. And there's a lot of in between. The in betweens take a couple of forms. One, people are saying like, "Hey, we respect Reza Pahlavi because his father was so great and everything. We respect him, but we don't want a monarchy. He can just support us with his messages, with his Twitter account, by
Yeah.
meeting people. But obviously, we don't want him as the king. We don't want kings. Kings are over. We want a secular democracy. But we appreciate his support." And they also point out that he himself said that he doesn't support monarchy. So given that he himself has said that, so yes, let's stop.
That's not
We
gonna
should,
happen. Okay.
but there's another group of people that are saying no, fuck him as well, because his father was a dictator. Even though this regime is worse, but his father was also a dictator, and part of his dictatorship is the reason why people protested and made things worse, which brought the Islamic Republic. So we have many
Yeah.
views, okay? Some people want to unite around the monarchs. Some people are like, no, fuck the monarchs. We want a secular democracy. So there's a whole division between the protesters on that as well. But go on.
Okay. Two more questions. Afif is also saying, he's like, which Islamic country is most likely to become democratic in the next 50 years? I'm kind of an optimist on this. I'm just seeing way too much stuff happening. I think it'll be more than just a few, because we're talking about 50 years and things are happening really, really fast. I mean, even in the last 10 years, and we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. But if you're talking about which one's going to be first,
Well, can we keep the ones that we already have, like Tunisia?
yeah, we have Tunisia. I mean, Turkey kind of was like a quasi
Right.
thing, but there's and now the thing is, officially there are a lot of them. Like Pakistan is a democracy officially. Bangladesh is a democracy officially. Right? So there are many of these countries that are officially democracies, but it doesn't really play out that way, right? It doesn't, like, Turkey is supposed to be a parliamentary democracy, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
the problem is that a lot of them are going backward, right? So
They're going
I'm
backwards.
hoping,
They're going, like,
like,
Turkey is the best example of
we
that.
made a lot of progress in Tunisia. It's still not complete, but we made a lot of progress.
Indonesia.
Algeria, recently we're making a lot of progress, so I hope that doesn't go backward. Morocco, we made a lot of progress. I hope that doesn't go backwards, right? So
But
a lot of them are actually North. It's very interesting, actually, Ali, because a lot of them that have made the best progress are North African, North African Islamic countries,
Right.
which don't get as much attention as Middle Eastern Islamic countries.
Yeah, they don't. It is a matter of, like, a lot of it has to do with. We saw that in the Arab Spring, like, where a lot of the momentum was. The other thing I would say, I would think that when it comes to a proper democracy within the next 50 years or maybe earlier, I really feel like at some point Iran is going to break, and I think Iran's going to be
Sudan
that
as well.
country.
We need some episodes on Sudan, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco.
Yeah, I actually just recently made contact with a Nigerian ex-Muslim atheist.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, we're going to talk, and then
We need Nigeria as well, but for a different reason. Nigeria, we need an episode for because of ideological reasons, but for political, like revolutionary protest, secularism related stuff, we need Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna. Now the thing is, I really do think it's Iran. I feel like Iran is kind of ahead of schedule in a lot of ways. So I feel like a lot of these Arab countries, and I've said this before on the show, a lot of the Arab countries that have or have had secular dictatorships in the past, right, relatively secular, like Iraq, like Syria, like Libya was, like Egypt was. So all these countries, they have to go through whenever these dictatorships come down. The resurgence that what replaces it democratically often is an Islamic kind of force. So in Syria, you saw that eventually everything morphs into an Islamic thing. The opposition, the Free Syrian Army, and then eventually ISIS. There's a wide range. In Egypt, you saw that with Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood that got elected. Wait, just 1 second. So I think that, and I kind of think that happened with Iran after the fall of the Shah, and then you had this this sort of multi-tiered revolution that included a lot of different groups, but eventually, it is the Islamic regime that took over. So Iran is kind of ahead of the curve on that. And I feel like you
Yeah.
have to, a lot of these countries, Muslim majority countries, have to go through this, because when dictatorships are in power, the only opposition parties against dictators in those parts of the world that have the ability to organize, provide social services, and operate independently, and that are the most ready to lead and have built communities when these dictators fall, are the Islamic organizations. And then so they go through that phase, and once that falls, unfortunately, it took a very long time in Iran. I hope it takes less time in the other countries, but I think it's at the point where it's going to crack and it's going to fall
So,
any day now. And I
so,
feel like when it does happen, it'll be very fast.
so just to give some, because I'm not, because you give some optimistic narratives, I'm going to give some pessimistic
Please, yeah,
narratives.
piss on it.
I'm going to piss on it a little bit, not just
All the way.
not just because it's, I don't know if it's true or not, but just to give you the counter narrative. The counter narrative is that the problems with Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon right now is that we might become a little bit optimistic because we see the protesters, but the ideological things that made the sectarianism or the dictatorship possible, sectarianism in Iraq and Lebanon, and authoritarianism in Iran, the ideological forces behind that might be a little bit more deep rooted in the people than people are willing to admit, right? It might be like these are like the silent majority. I don't like for example, if you see the protests in Iraq, you might be like, and you see the protests, and I don't know if you saw it, Ali. There was a video of protests in Iraq, and they were saying no to Sunnis, no to Shia, secularism, secularism. Did you see that video? That was a
No.
very powerful video, and I mean, when I saw that video, my heart sank. Like I felt emotional. I almost cried. Like it was beautiful, but how many people do they how many people do they represent in Iraq?
That's another
The
question
fact
I'm seeing a lot. Like, how many people are truly secular minded?
right, like the fact is, like, yeah, the protesters are out, and it's great in Iraq and in Lebanon. But the fact that there's also a shit ton of Shias in Iraq that hates Sunnis, and the fact that
Mm.
there's a shit ton of Sunnis in Iraq that hates Shias, and the fact that the Kurds in Iraq, if they could completely get separated from, like, the Kurds in Iraq, they don't give a shit about Iraq. Like, they refer to the Kurdistan part of Iraq as if it's already its own country, right? They don't see themselves as Iraqis, right?
Yeah.
These sectarianism is deep rooted in the people. Or in Lebanon, like people in Lebanon are protesting, and they're demanding an end to sectarianism. They're like, what the kind of, we have a government that the prime minister needs to be Sunni, the president needs to be a Christian, and the head of the parliament needs to be a Shia. What the fuck is this? Like, how is this? How do we have so much sectarianism within the with how we govern the entire country? They're like, we want that to end, and we see the protests and we get hopeful, but how deep rooted is that in the people? Why was, if it is deep rooted in most of the people, how is it that Hezbollah keeps getting more and more votes in every elections, right? Why is it why are Christians in Hezbollah, Christians in Lebanon holding Hezbollah pictures? How is that happening? Right? Like, you see, how is Hezbollah getting more and more support in Lebanon? Like, there's two sides to this coin. Like, there's the other side as well. You look at Iran, you see the protests. You see, like, wow, people want secular democracy. That's amazing. But how many people how many people support the Islamic Republic? How many people do not support the Islamic government but want another Shia regime? Right? How many people in Iran are like, yeah, this government is shit. We hate Khamenei. But the alternative that they want is another Shia theocracy. How many of them are like that? I don't know. You know why I don't know? Because there's not that many reliable polls out there to figure this out. But I'm just saying, it might be like, yes, there might be a lot of demands for secular democracy, but a lot of the problems that we have, I don't know how much of this ideology is actually held by the people as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really hard to tell. I mean, a lot of times people try to ask Iranians, the Iranian diaspora, And if you go to Los Angeles, you go to the Persian community in California, they're all like Shah supporters. A lot of them are very, very secular. They're atheists. They reject Islam. They reject everything. And then you come to other places, like for example, my brother is married to an Iranian woman, and then her family is actually it's a mixture of everything. Some people they're all religious. Some of them are pro Khomeini, others are anti Khomeini, but they all happen to be religious, so to varying degrees. So it is a very complex kind of thing, and the conversations that they have are really interesting. So yeah, let's see what happens. I think we might end up doing another, if something major happens. I would probably get together and
All right,
whatever it is, even if I'm on the phone, we'd have another sort of episode on this.
Okay,
and we can talk about it as it comes
I
up.
just right now got another message from message from Iran, and people they're telling me that the people that did burn the Qurans and the religious the Islamic Jose, you know what Jose is, like a religious buildings, right?
Yeah,
They're saying that they're telling me that they have the videos to show that this was the people, not the government, right? So I don't know, I haven't seen the videos. So she's saying that the people that are telling you that that's the government, that's not true. The people that are burning the mosque,
it's not hard to believe. I mean,
yeah, I'm more on the side of
it's
believing
hard
that.
for me to believe that it is the people burning the hospitals. Oh,
Yes,
sure, that's not them.
yeah, and I
But when
think
it
it's
comes to burning mosques,
I,
yeah,
I would believe this more than the hospital one, because the people that I think it's a very desperate attempt to claim that it's the government burning the Korans. I bet you a lot of people are like a lot of people that work for the government, even if the government tells them to burn the Quran, they were like, no, I'm not gonna burn the fucking Quran. So that's like such conspiracy level nonsense that is coming from some of the pro-Islam but anti-government protesters, right? So because I think that's nonsense. Like, I don't think any Basij would ever be able to physically make his own hand like move the flames towards the Quran. I think they
yeah.
would just shoot me. I'm not gonna do that, right? But but to me it shows a huge
Yeah,
desperation. So, but let me just tell you this, Ali. The fact that
yeah.
the protesters that are against the government but are not anti-Islamic, the fact that they're claiming that the people that are burning the Quran must be from the government, to me it shows that they're very, very scared of division between the protesters, because some of the protesters are extremely anti-Islamic and some of them aren't, and the protesters that are not anti-Islamic are trying to ask the anti-Islamic protesters to chill the fuck down when it comes to their anti-Islamic narratives, because they're like, just focus on the government instead of Islam, because we're gonna lose a lot of support if you go out and burn Qurans and stuff. They're like, because a lot of the people in this country are Muslims and they might support toppling this government, and they're like, we're gonna lose them if you go out and burn Qurans. So they're very, very scared. Like, they're like they're thinking that maybe these anti-Islam people are not helping our cause. But the anti-Islamic protesters, what their response to that will be, fuck that shit. Islam is the source of all our problems, and I'm not gonna. Islam is the entire reason why we have this regime. So if you're like, hey, let's just go against the government and not against Islam, they were like, well, no, because I don't want to remove this government to bring another government that is Islamic. So this protest needs to be anti-Islamic from the get-go to make it clear exactly what we're what we want, right? So again, those are the two different narratives that you get from the protesters.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we're gonna stay on top of this, and then let's see. Again, we might have another episode on this. We might have to get back together and just to see if something happens over there. If any of you have any information, tweet at us, let us know, email us, and we'll know. So thank you very much for.
Beej is saying this has been so educational. Thank you, Armin and Ali. Thank you, Beej.
Like this is This is actually, I think, for Armin, obviously, this is, I mean, we are sort of fascinated by this. We're very interested.
And
But I
Faraz
think
is saying
for Armin,
you guys are awesome. Thank you, Faraz. But go on.
yeah, and I think Armin is also for Armin. This is very personal too. I mean, this is a place where he grew up with his whole family and everything like that. So
no, it's not.
there's a lot.
It's not. I would have been the reason why.
Okay, I shouldn't have spoken for you.
No. Because let me tell you this. To me, it's about human beings, right? The reason why I have more to say about this is because the videos and messages that are coming out of Iran, they're in Persian. So I understand them, and because of being from Iran, and also being in touch with a lot from people from Iran, there's a lot more that I know that I could contribute a lot more. That's why the passion is because of the amount of knowledge and because of the amount of nuance that I could contribute to this. Not because I care about Iranian people more than other people in the world. If I could speak Arabic,
nobody's saying that.
No, I'm just saying like. I'm just telling you, like, even if I've never been to any Arab country in my whole life, right? But if I could speak Arabic and if I had the same level of connections to people in Arab countries, I would be doing more shows about those countries. Like we do have actually connections to Arab countries, right? We have a lot of Atheist Republic members inside Arab countries that are in touch with us, and because of their influence and because of me being in touch with them, we do provide more nuance than many other sources on those topics as well. But this real time, like, I can't read Arabic, so this whole real time, and I can't, like, I'm right now I'm in touch with a lot of people in Iran that don't speak English, right? So they provide making content that don't speak English. There's a huge delay for their content is not being featured right now, but I could listen to them and I could get a more nuanced details.
Yeah,
but it's because of my ability that I'm providing more information on these things. But as in general, I care about human beings. I have no emotionally. I don't care about the country and the people of a country more because I'm from there. Okay, I care about Iranian people because they're suffering, not because they're Iranian. Okay, I care about them because they're suffering, but not because they're Iranian. That's not something that affects me. People suffering. And the focus is because of the amount of contributions that I could provide, not because they're Iranian.
Okay, got it. Thank you for correcting me. Okay. And anyway, so I'm really trying to wrap this up because we're out of time. Anyway, but Armin, thank you, everybody out there. Thank you, everybody who listened. Afif, Temjin, Anne, Marin, Mars, Beej, Faraz. Oh, you guys, there's a lot of people here.
Khalid,
and then Nisantara, Rising, Muskal, everybody. Thank you very much.
Love
and
you
Mars,
guys. Thank you for being here with
us. And Parsa
please,
Shams, stay in touch. Yeah.
Please share our content. YouTube and Facebook, they don't like us. All the algorithms are working against our content. It's really, really hard for us to grow this podcast, given that the content that we cover is so sensitive. It's not social media friendly. It's really hard for us to grow.
We've had to get our Twitter account reinstated at least 2 or 3 times in just the last couple of months.
Yep, but it's getting even worse. Like everybody else that grew before us, they had everything was working in their favor. Now it's so hard for us to grow because we don't get recommended as often. We don't show up on people's feeds. It's really hard to grow given how algorithms are negatively affecting our shows. So we really need to rely on our community to spread our content and find more people that will discover us. So please share our content. Even if you don't have a lot of followers, it doesn't matter. That just signals to this social media. The fact that you're sharing it boosts the entire thing that shows that social media that this might be an important content. So just share it. Just share it. Thank you.
And just if you can do it, if there's one thing you can do, just go and give us a rating on iTunes.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that really, really helps. Just if there's one thing you can do, that's one thing. And then again, finally, thank you to Jennifer again for the super chat. Really appreciate it. We're gonna see you guys next time.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you guys.
Take care. Bye.